So my name is Cole Whitman. I'm from Thousand Oaks, California, and I'm here on behalf of Young Investor Society, meeting with Barbara Corcoran. So thanks for taking time to...
And Cole here is the winner. He's the winner and won the big contest. So I'm so privileged to be with Cole as well.
Thank you.
So you got a whole list of questions, Cole. You could cheat and look down at your notes, no problem at all.
Okay, I do it. So who are some of your greatest mentors growing up, and how have they helped affect your career?
You know, I think it's a misnomer that most people who build successful businesses have a mentor. If you don't happen to land on someone early, you usually don't have that kind of help. But what everybody has in their life is someone who influenced them, or someone they want to emulate, someone who impressed them. And so, although I didn't have a mentor, I had a great role model that I think I've mimicked my whole life, which was my mother. It wasn't as though my mother had any business experience. She was a housewife and raised 10 kids in a little house. But if you think about how to raise a family on a shoestring budget and get the best out of all the team players, so to speak, if you could think of the family as the team, my mother was a genius at it. We probably had the happiest family in town. We had our issues like any family. I don't want to paint a Pollyanna picture. But my mother was a phenomenal organizer. She was a great inspirational type person, brought out the best in her kids, was very capable of organizational systems, and all of that applied very well once I started my own business. But more than anything else, I had the role model of a happy person who had her own personal goals to accomplish and managed to do that. And so, call her a mentor, I wouldn't say that. I would call her a mother, but call her an influence without a doubt. And it kind of gave me a compass for the rest of my life.
Wow, that's awesome. So I guess the next kind of question is, what is some of like the best financial advice that you've ever been given?
It's going to get boring because I'm going to talk about my mother again, but we'll leave her behind, I'm sure, with your other questions. The best financial advice I ever got was from my mother, because I had 22 jobs, all part-time jobs as I went through school. But when I was 23, I announced to her I was going to start my own business. And my boyfriend was giving me $1,000 to start the business. And I thought she'd be so happy for me. And the best financial advice she gave me was, Barbara, you've had 22 jobs. Why don't you hold one for a while and get a good resume? And after you have that experience, then go out and sell and start your own business. And I thought that was terrible advice. And because I thought it was so terrible, and because I was so arrogant at that age, like who thinks a parent knows anything, that I almost went out and started the business despite her advice. So kind of weird that what seemed like terrible advice, which I thought it was, motivated me to go the other way. And so I consider that my best advice I ever got.
Wow. So what were kind of the first steps that you took after taking that initial $1,000 to create the Corcoran Group?
Well, I guess you could say I made a financial plan, which is a joke because I never passed a math course in my life. But the financial plan I was able to do is I had $1,000, and I figured out what it was going to cost to put a apartment ad, 3 lines in the New York Times on a Sunday, and what it was going to cost me to get cab fare around the city if I was lucky enough to get a client. And when I did the math on that, I knew I had 6 weeks to stay in business. I could burn through the $1,000 in 6 weeks. So I looked at the $1,000 and said, okay, I got 6, oh, and also the phone expense. I forgot that. That was smaller, but it was still part of it. And then I thought, I got 6 weeks to run. And all I really have to do is rent one apartment in 6 weeks. Surely I could do that. Yeah. And so when I placed my first ad in the paper, at the time the MLS of New York City and everywhere else was the largest paper. That's where you look for property. And so when I opened the New York Times to see what my competition was, there were thousands of little 3-line ads for 1-bedroom apartments, all roughly the same price. And so I thought I have to do some gimmick to attract attention because nobody's going to call. There's so much competition. And so I thought of convincing my old boss, because I was the secretary for my most recent boss, who owned buildings, and he allowed me, or he listened to me when I said build a wall between the living room and the dining room, and then I could advertise 1-bedroom and den. And so my ad went in 1-bedroom and den, $340, and it competed against the thousands of other ads that said 1-bedroom, $340, 1-bedroom, $330, 1-bedroom, $350. And I got like dozens of calls to that ad because I offered a better value. Same apartment, but merchandise. And I made a boom rental deal the very first day. And with that $340, I increased my ability to run with the business, you know, another more than third. And so I constantly did the same ad, constantly got customers, constantly got commissions, and that gave me the motion to start the business and eventually give me the money to hire my second person.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what made you want to go into real estate?
I didn't want to go into real estate. I wanted to work and make a buck. And if my boyfriend hadn't said to me one day, you got a great personality, and you'd really, and he said this to me behind a waitress counter, he said, you got a great personality, you'd be great in real estate sales. And I thought, really, why not? I tried everything else, give it a whirl. But the moment I stepped onto the sidewalks of New York and started running around town showing apartments, to me it felt like, this is a job? This is a blast. I just have to chat up people, that's all. And it seemed like second nature, and it was immediately my most favorite job, which points to the very important lesson. If you don't really love what you do, chances are you shouldn't be doing it, because you're never going to find success by hitting yourself against the wall. You got to move right on and find something that naturally taps into your great traits. And my trait was personality. My trait was outgoingness, and my trait was the gift of gab. And those are all great things to have if you're going to be in sales.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've obviously made tons of investments, from Shark Tank, personal investments, lots of things. What's the greatest investment that you've ever made in your opinion?
Well, it depends what you mean by great. Most enjoyable investment that I make a lot of money on would be Cousins Maine Lobster, owned by two young guys. First weekend, after they had a truck as a side venture, they were on Shark Tank. They had 1 week of numbers, but they were phenomenal salespeople. They became my best investment, and that was probably in season third, the third season. They make a tremendous amount of money. They've built it into a franchise, or I should say we built it into a franchise. I remember when I said to Saban and Jim, this could be a franchise. They didn't know what a franchise was. What's a franchise? Okay, they found out what a franchise was. It's a money maker if you can run a really good business and you could replicate the same formula, which we do with Cousins, Maine Lobster, trucks, and restaurants. Okay, but if you were asking me what's my most profitable business, the biggest surprise of my Shark Tank career, which happened 2 seasons ago, was it last season? I think last season. Two guys come in wearing an oversized sweatshirt with like a fur liner, a fake fur liner, and they sing a jingle to the tune of Noel, I think, or some stupid Christmas song. It was around Christmas, yeah, whatever, okay. So they sing the jingle about what a great thing, everybody wants this thing called a comfy. Everybody will want it. Well, when we all ask them as sharks, what does it cost? The things that people usually know. What does it cost to make? We don't know. Where are you going to sell it? We don't know. Who's going to buy it? We don't know. And I remember sitting there and all the sharks were laughing at me. I thought, well, these guys are a lot of fun. Two brothers, they seem nice enough. I'd like to have a beer with them at a bar. I'll give them $10,000 for a third of their business. And we made the deal. And of course, today we have over $200 million.
Oh my gosh.
Whoever saw that thing coming, you know?
That's amazing.
I have to tell you, all the most logical things you think are going to make sense on Shark Tank that we all buy into, in the end, very often peter out and don't go anywhere. And the things that are the most stupid things in the world often are your big surprises. But what it comes down to in the end is you have to have a decent idea. But more than that, you have to have the right people that are going to make that idea a reality. And the two brothers who own Comfy were very capable of doing that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how has your experience at Shark Tank kind of helped change the way that you look at potential investments? Like, what are the main things that you look at in an investment on
Well, you know
Shark
what I
Tank?
learned through Shark Tank, because I wasn't aware of it the first few years on the show, that I knew all along. It kind of reminded me of what I knew all along. When I built my real estate company, the most important thing I had to do is identify talent, commission salespeople. I had identified talent, and I had to recruit them in, make them want to work for me, and then I had to make them want to stay. That's a people talent, that's all it is, okay? And I got my own formula for identifying potential talent, because I didn't have sales records. How do you know this person could sell? How do you know this person won't be able to sell? I developed a system for identifying sales talent. And it wasn't until I was on Shark Tank, the first 3 seasons, losing a heck of a lot of money, because we all invest our money, that one day it hit me. Somebody walked in and pitched. I can't even remember who they were. And I don't even remember if I invested in them, but somebody walked in and pitched, and they reminded me of one of my star salespeople that made a ton of money at the Corcoran Group. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, this is just like recruiting sales help. I need people with talent, okay, with the talent to sell. And I started looking at every entrepreneur after that point. Can they sell? Can they sell? Can they sell? If they can't sell, I don't buy. If they can sell, I always make money. That's the way it goes. Because if you can't sell me, if you can't sell the other sharks on buying into you and get us excited, how are you going to sell your customers? How are you going to sell the product? It just doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
So the number one trait I'm shopping for on Shark Tank is sales talent. That's really, I've narrowed it down.
So what kind of things stick out as like red flags or warnings when you're being pitched an investment?
Everybody's got their things that turn them off, right?
Mm-hmm.
In anything. For me, it's fancy language. Number one, people are talking about burn rates and all the fashionable, latest, coolest, pivoting, all that stuff. I don't like it because I think they're couching problems, making it feel acceptable. Probably the most discouraging thing I hear is when someone's speaking like there's nothing wrong with having lost their first round of investors' money because now they've really landed on the right formula. I never invested in anything like that. It's not so much that I don't believe the person might get it right, but I don't like the attitude looking back, like, they invested, we lost that money, but we're going on to, what? It seems totally irresponsible and unconscionable to me. The other red flag I always respond to is if someone doesn't have energy. The problem with that is that I've never met a great entrepreneur who built a business who didn't have enormous energy. And so if they don't have the energy, I'm like, they're not going to make it. You don't manufacture that for yourself. Yeah. It's either there, or you either got it or you don't. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What kind of questions should entrepreneurs be asking themselves before they start their own business?
I think the most important thing is to sit down and make a list of what you're good at. Everybody knows what they're good at. They could be blind to what they're not good at, but they know what they're good at. I got an outgoing person. If I were to say now, after all these years of different businesses I've been involved in, what am I good at? I'm good at the exact same things I was good at when I was 12. It hasn't changed. I'm very good at meeting people. I'm very good at getting along with people. I'm very good at selling, getting somebody on my side to come along with me. If I have an idea, I can collect people to believe in me. And I'm very good at delivering. And I'm very, I always say that's it. I'm good at, then I learned I'm good at marketing. That's just a business version of an outgoing personality, really. But I have a lot that I'm not good at. And I think that's the second thing and most important thing that a young entrepreneur should do. Make a list of what you're great at and make a list of what you don't got.
Yeah.
So I was a terrible student, terrible at writing, terrible at reading, terrible at math. Anything on the left-hand side of life, I was terrible at. And so I knew that starting my own business. And within 6 months, I had in my head, I got to find myself a partner. And I think it's good to go out and look for your opposite. I found Esther Kaplan, who had all the gifts that I didn't have, and I had all the gifts she didn't have. And together we built this giant business. But I think you really have to be honest with yourself. What do I got? And then how do I replace what I don't have? It doesn't mean you have to have a partner, but you better have somebody at your right flank who's good at the stuff you don't. Because it takes all things to build a business, So Esther did legal, financial, accounting, filing systems, technology, all the stuff I would have messed up on. And I didn't have to worry about it. She was as good at that as I was good at what I was at. And together, it's one of those 1 + 1 = 5.
Yeah. So as you grew up, you're one of 10 children.
Yeah.
So what kind
You're
of
one of 5.
I am one of 5, yes. So what kind of experiences and how did those experiences kind of help you? What did you learn from the experience of growing up with 9 other siblings?
I think it's a great asset in any business if you grow up in a larger family. And anything over 3, my mother used to say, anything over 3, I was out of control. Big is big. So 5 is the same as 10, as is 3. It's confusion. Yeah, 3 is a crowd and 3 balls in the air. What you learn from being part of a clan is you kind of have your own town. You kind of have your own pot that everybody assumes a role. You don't have to do that as a single child. You're the king or the queen usually, and there's one role. But you learn to get along with people. You learn to jockey for position. I learned to get attention. We had 2 parents to spread around 10 kids. None of us got enough attention. I knew how to be funny and get humor to get my parents' attention. Isn't she funny? Okay. That wouldn't have happened, I don't think, in a small family because it was a means to get attention. I didn't realize at the time, but that's been very useful to me in building a business. You also know how to run for cover Hard to run for cover when you're an only kid and the limelight's always over your head. A group of 10 or 5 or what have you, you know when to disappear, when to come in, okay? So in a real way, you're getting a real life experience before you get out of the house. When you get out in the real life, it's not that different anymore. You're not shocked by the exposure of how things happen with a collective group of people because you've grown up in a collection.
Okay, so in your book, Shark Tales, you talk a little bit about how you have a method of prioritizing things. Would you mind kind of explaining to high school students around the world?
Yeah, and I don't think this is just for business. I think it's a means that could be used to get the most out of life, okay? We all spend the same 24 hours a day, and how long we live, you never know, okay? But my sense of priority is making a list of exactly what I need to do. This includes personal as well as business things, as well as hobby things, whatever. And then I look through the list. Let's say I have a list before I leave the workday. I listed it. I simply, and sometimes I don't get through it to the day, but I usually will make it in bed the next morning before I even get up. You have the list, and I look through and I think, okay, what are my A's, what are my B's, what are my C's? You can't fool yourself into thinking your A's are the most enjoyable. I love to write a thank you letter. I love to gossip with one of my best friends. I love this. I want it to be an A, but my pen doesn't write A. Yeah. I know it's a C because it can wait. Okay. Yeah. I rate my A's, the items that are going to be most important in building my business. On the personal end, my A's are the things that are going to be most important in enriching my life. So it might be plan a vacation. It might be get home early and arrange flowers. Whatever's going to float my boat and make me feel like I got a joy out of something. That's for my personal. And with work, it's whatever's going to produce the most money. Whatever's got the best potential of driving the most for my business. And so I just write A, B's, and C's. And before I give myself the luxury of addressing a B or a C, I address my A's, do the stuff I really don't want to do, but the most productive stuff first, and then I give myself the treat of moving to my B's and C's. If you get through any day with many A's left over, B's and C's, no problem with that, but I move it over to my next day's list. It doesn't go away, okay? Yeah. It also allows you to see where you're procrastinating, and it makes you, if you're true to your system, makes you address square between the eyes what you should be doing. Okay? And I think that's a system that anybody can use. Yeah.
What advice would you give to high school students out there, young entrepreneurs who are trying to become investors right now?
I'm not a believer in that. When you say investors, you mean investors in the stock market, penny stocks, big stock,
yeah, in the stock
that kind of stuff. Well, I guess it's an interesting experience. You're talking about kids in high school who have the money to invest?
Yeah.
So they're really investing somebody else's money. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say don't. Okay. I got a call from my son when he was in his 3rd year at Columbia. No business experience. He went to sports camps his whole life. Was in sports after school, so I'm not knocking it, but that was the degree of his experience. He was a great player and all, but that was the degree of his experience. And in his 3rd year, he calls me up so excited, telling me he had hoarded his allowance for however long, and he had bought penny stocks, and he was doing so well. He was making a killing. 30% gain, but I think he had invested $3,000 or something. Yeah. 30% gain, Mom, I can invest your money, I'm only making, imagine if I had 10 times, give me your money. And I simply said to him, call me when you lose your money. And about maybe 2 months later, he had lost the money. Okay, yeah. You have no business, I don't think, investing until you have real life experience and the real life experience of earning your own bucks. Very different spending your money that you slaved yourself at $10, $20 an hour to make than invest your mother or father's money or rich uncle's money or what have you, or even hoarding your parents' allowance, which I didn't like, okay? You have no business really there until you own it. God bless the child who makes his own. And I think that's the time to invest, when you can lose your own money or make your own money, but I think I put a lot of emphasis on own, O-W-N, you made it.
Yeah. So when balancing work ethic and kind of intellect, what do you think is more important?
You could buy intellect. You could steal ideas from the next guy. You could ask a million smart people for their opinion. So I don't want to say it's meaningless, but it's so available. It's a commodity that's out there just by being a human being, if you're willing to ask. It's in the hard work. It's always in the hard work. I mean, I don't think people appreciate how hard entrepreneurs work if they're successful. And I don't think people appreciate, despite your hard work and despite your best efforts and despite you putting the pedal to the metal every minute of the day, that you can have very bad turns, because that's the way life is. But I think in the end, hard work sees you through. Hard work sees you through. If you have a little bit of judgment, and again, you could borrow the judgment from the next guy, but in the end, you make the call, and in the end, you got to do the work. Yeah.
So is there anything that you would have done differently throughout your career?
There's probably one thing that I took too long to do, but I finally did it, and that was when I was in business with my boyfriend. He was my 51% partner for 7 years. He decided to marry my secretary, and that was so shocking to me and so hurtful. What? Is this a joke? That I had a hard time getting over it. So in my attempt to get over it and lick my injury and wonder how I could survive without him, I took a whole year to do that. And if in hindsight, I wish I hadn't wasted that year. I wish I would have done what I did 1 year later. I wish I had done it in a month.
Yeah.
And that was, I walked in on a Friday morning and said, guess what, we're ending our business today. And we're going to chop up our 14 people into 2 teams. You pick the first person, I pick the second, so it's even-handed. And you move or I move, but we're ending the partnership today. And we did exactly that. We divided the business in probably like 5 minutes flat. And I went with my 7, and he stayed with his 7, and I started again. In hindsight, I should have done that after a month. Maybe give myself a month to feel sorry for myself. Yeah. But why put up with that for a whole year? Seeing them smiling and laughing together every day, because I couldn't fire her because he was in charge. 51%, he reminded me. And it was so hurtful. I can't believe I allowed myself to diminish myself in that regard. That's the only regret. Everything else, can I tell you, there were tons of mistakes. There were tons of bad markets. There were tons of times I thought I'd go out of business and scrapping to stay, taking jobs for other people to support my business. But you just do what you do, and there's no regret on that. But I wish I had been a little more self-confident at 29 years old than I was. Yeah. That's about it. I had to come up with something. Yeah.
So you talk a little bit in your book about kind of trying to find joy in the journey. Would you mind touching on that a little bit, on how someone can find
well,
that
we
joy?
touched a little bit about it a few minutes ago. Oh, actually, I shouldn't say that because he probably wants to reverse the ending. Okay, all right. And what did I say before? Because I don't want to repeat that. Okay, yeah. One thing I learned from my mom was she didn't stress over money, and certainly should have. She didn't know how she was going to buy our school clothes or get them from someone or feed us when my dad lost his job, which was frequently. But she always had a philosophy, it'll work out, it'll work out. It wasn't like she was not responsible. She had to juggle the working out to feed us. So there had to be enormous stress. But she kept her eye on taking the joy out of living. And when I sold my business 30 years after, or 28 years, whatever it was, after I started it for $66 million cash, of course, my mother was the first person I called. And her response, of course, was, how exciting is it? How exciting? How does that feel? How does that feel, you know? So I was telling her that story. It was just fresh, and she was in New Jersey. I was in New York. We were on the line. And then she commented, or I commented, but we were on the same page. I forget who said it. But the comment that was made was the joy was really in the journey. And it was so clear to me, it wasn't the cash and the victory and the reaching your goal, you know, which should have been were all the satisfactions. Already I was looking back at that whole journey of a million little decisions and thousands of people and changes that I made in their lives, they made in my lives, the teammanship, the notoriety, all those millions of little pieces, like a tiny little movie and splintered in a million pieces. And I was able to see so clearly the real joy was in the journey. And I don't think you can project that out when you're your age thinking that, but you'll find if you're doing the right thing with your life, when you have a victory, it's smart if you're able to pause and see the joy you got out of everything to that point, because the victory is never exactly what you think it is. because you've dreamt about it so long. The victory is actually in the process.
Oh,
You know? Yeah.
thank you.
My pleasure.
What kind of lessons have you learned from previous failed investments, and how has that kind of motivated you to look
Change
for
my
success?
attitude,
Yes,
that
change.
kind of thing. The failed investments, I invest in two areas. I buy real estate for investment purposes to generate income. Okay. What I've learned in that, well, I've never really had a failure, but really I've invested in New York City, which is always, if you're a long-term holder, you always make money. Okay, so that's probably not a good example. On Shark Tank, however, you get a smorgasbord, a huge menu of what you want to invest in, different kinds of businesses, different sizes, different people. So it's like an embarrassment of riches. I'll take one of those, I'll take one of those. I won't pay this, but I will pay this, okay? But what I've learned is not to pay much attention to the business itself. Because if it's whacked out, it doesn't make much sense. If you've got a spirited entrepreneur who's driven and really needs some money and his back is against the wall, this is one shot, that urgency, that person is going to succeed. They'll find a way, and you're just there with them to help them along, okay? So you could always change a business model. You could always come up with even a different product, a different service, totally, but you can't change the person driving it. And so I'm buying people who drive the business. I'm buying into entrepreneurs, their potential. And that's what I've learned in Shark Tank. And that's reinforced more and more every year I'm on the show.
Yeah.
What's your best traits?
I think I'm very extremely motivated. Once I find something to motivate me, it's hard to keep me away from it.
And what have you found so far that motivates you?
Making money is honestly something that really motivates me. I've kind of come up with different business ideas for myself, starting kind of from a young age to make a few dollars to being able to get a job, make some more money, and I've actually been able to invest a lot of that money in the stock market and long-term investments.
How much money could you make by your age to invest in the stock market?
I made around $3,000 or $4,000, which I've been able to invest. Which has been helpful because I've actually been able to grow. I started investing when I was 12. Started with 12 stocks.
Tell me you please bought Apple.
Well, I did buy Apple, but not when I was 8 or 12.
But still.
I bought it when I was 14. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Still a good amount of time. But I've actually been able to grow that initial 12 shares into about 800 shares today.
Good for you.
Stock, which has been really a great learning
And when you're
experience.
trading stock, what turns you on? The process of doing the action and the potential of it, or are you only turned on when you get the cash?
No, I like the process. Learning about a company is really rewarding for me, honestly. I like kind of digging into their financials and kind of you find the little niche that they have in the market, and when those numbers kind of start to click, it's kind of a cool experience.
So your own judgment of finding the key ingredients in your research is very important?
Yeah, it is very important to me.
Are you accurate in your judgment, or tell me about a mistake you've made?
I've been accurate sometimes. There's been a couple miscommunications where I haven't been quite as accurate. One of the best stock recommendations, I guess, that I've had, one of my picks was Target stock, which we actually pitched at the global stock pitch competition last year for Young Investor Society. We pitched at about $70, and they had two of the highest gains that they've ever had 2 days, where they went up 17% and 19%.
Wow, so that was a good call.
Yeah,
and how about a bad one?
So a bad one. So I invested in a gold company when I was about 12, and obviously the economy, the market's been doing really well. The last couple of days have been a little different, but it's been doing successful. It's been pretty successful, and so I actually saw a pretty large
that's a bad one.
On that. So I invested in.
I wish my sense of bad was like
Eldorado Gold, and I lost about 20% of my money on that investment.
That's not so bad.
Over time, so not too bad, but still a failure nonetheless.
Yeah, I see. Okay, that's not so bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been fortunate to have a fairly successful portfolio thus far.
Yeah.
So
have you ever invested in anyone else's money?
I have, actually. My grandfather actually gave me a little bit of his money to invest.
And how have you done for him?
So I've done pretty successful. I've only been managing it for about 2 months, but it's up about 7%
Wow.
today. So
Let me have, would you mind handing me that bag over there? Yeah. I'm going to give you $100 right now. You're going to invest for me, okay? I just want to see what you do with it. I believe you $100 worth. That's about it. Okay.
oh my gosh.
Okay. You don't have to report to me. Just give me once a year any a gain,
Okay, I will.
or let me know I've lost it. I won't kill you. That's 3, 4, 5. There you go, $100. That only leaves me $100 to get me through the next
Wow.
year. You better not lose that money.
I will take pride in investing this money.
Okay,
for
good.
sure.
All right. Make sure you do well for me. What I hear in what you just said that is of importance is not that you've done well or where you've lost. Okay, I was hoping you had a bigger loss. It's always good. It's respectable to have a big loss. It burns and you never forget it. Okay, 20% losing it, not such a big gain. I was hoping you would say, I lost it all in one of them. Okay, so I hope for you lose it all, not on my 100. But the most important thing is that you enjoyed the process. If you like the process of the hunt, chances are you could be very successful with that process. It's when people enjoy making the money, but they're not in love with the process, they never become really successful. You have to love your process and be naturally good at it, I think, to make a fortune.
Yeah.
So chances are you already found your career not so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The process is definitely something that I enjoy. The result's nice too, but the process is that's where the fun lies in for me.
Oh,
I kind of enjoy it. It's kind of weird, but I kind of
not
enjoy
weird
it.
at all. It's
So.
exactly what an entrepreneur should have. I know when I was showing apartments, I never really thought I'd make much money in it. As long as I paid my rent and got my next ad in the paper, I was happy. But I loved waking up every day and doing the process of dragging people all over New York and talking to landlords and making the deal and negotiating. I was like, oh, it's so exciting. And because of that excitement is why I made money. I never thought about the money. It just kind of took care of itself, you know? Yeah. What do you think stops young people from going into business? I know a lot of people talk about it. I don't think the hit ratio of actually doing it is as good as it should be.
I think people know that in business there's, I guess like you have a high, it's not a high rate of success, but you can be very successful in business and people will talk about it and say, well, yeah, oh, that's smart, you're going into business, I know you can make a lot of money in that area, but I don't think people have the drive and the work. I think it takes someone that has the drive specifically that wants to be doing it to actually be successful in business, because a lot of people talk about it, I just don't think they're willing to put in the work that it takes. And when you're motivated, when you want to be able to do the work, I think that's what helps make someone a successful entrepreneur.
That is what makes them successful. Wholeheartedly, and I think we should end on that note, because you just gave the best lesson of the day. You got to be willing to do the work.
Thank you so much.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.